Filled with murder, rage, and insanity, we get the origin of the Red Goblin. What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the Red Goblin. So while this is going to be a review for Amazing Spider-Man 798, the primary focus is going to be on the origin story of the Red Goblin, or how the Green Goblin Norman Osborn became bonded with the Carnage symbiote and what that turned him into. So while I can really talk about this in a little bit, let's just dive right into the previous stories and see exactly how the Red Goblin came to be. Amazing Spider-Man 798 is what everybody has been waiting for. The Red Goblin has been teased for weeks, if not months, and he's finally going to make his debut inside the pages of issue 798. But if we're going to be diving into the Red Goblin and the Red Goblin's history, we've got to do a little bit of backstory. We can dive as far back as Amazing Spider-Man number 14, when we actually saw the Green Goblin make his debut. We can go to Amazing Spider-Man number 40, where we find out that it's Norman Osborn. You've got Amazing Spider-Man stories where you've got Green Goblin dying at the hands of Spider-Man, or actually his own glider, which is around 122. You can come back to even further down the line, but the real pickup of this story is actually Dan Slott's story in Superior Spider-Man number 31, where the Green Goblin had returned. He takes on the position as the leader of Alchemax, and what Otto Octavius in the role of Spider-Man does is he creates a cure for the Goblin Serum, basically bringing Norman Osborn back from the brink of insanity and canceling out his Goblin strength. A series of nanites course through his veins, neutralizing the Goblin Serum, essentially making him powerless and no longer able to obtain the status of being the Green Goblin. And this is something that has frustrated Norman Osborn for an extensive period of time. In Amazing Spider-Man 28, we see him battling Spider-Man as an arms dealer, taking over Silver Sable's country, ultimately defeated at the hands of Peter Parker's Spider-Man. We see him in Amazing Spider-Man number 32, where he returns trying to gain the powers of the mystical arts. While he can't necessarily achieve the Green Goblin status through science, he wishes to take into the dark arts and then become the Green Goblin himself, or at least that's what the test of the elders reveal as he's trying to take on this magical and mystical nature. He even tries to break into the Sanctum Sanctorum inside Marvel Legacy number 1, but he decides that he's going to go a different route, and that's where we pick up inside Amazing Spider-Man Threat Level Red. In 794, a bunch of hirelings holding goblin bombs break into an ultra-secure facility in the bottom of the ocean, attempting to steal a container, and inside this container, as we find out later on in the issue, is the Carnage symbiote. And you might be wondering, how the hell did Carnage actually end up in there, at least the symbiote? And if you had read Carnage number 16 by Jerry Conway, you'd realize that the Darkhold, this dark entity that was calling the powers of Carnage, was used against him to absolutely pull Carnage's symbiote out from Cletus Kasady. So it was contained by the FBI, put into the secure facility for Norman Osborn to steal. And as we finish up issue number 794, he's face to face with the container, with Carnage, and then in 795 bonds himself to it, becoming Carnage incarnate. And the battle ensues for the psyche of Norman Osborn, because at this point in time, he is still very much not the Green Goblin and very much sane, and the Carnage symbiote, which has been influenced by Cletus Kasady's psyche for so many years, has tried to vie for control over this particular character, becoming Carnage, and then finally Norman Osborn reining it in, taking it into control, and then in 796, satiating its bloodlust, killing a bunch of different guards people around there as he regains control, and then the Carnage symbiote manipulates his faculties so that way he can actually become his full-flesh self instead of the deformed post-surgery version of the Goblin that we saw in earlier issues. Of course, that does leave Norman Osborn and us as the reader wondering, what happens when you combine the Goblin Serum after the Carnage symbiote has expunged all the nanites, the cure for the Green Goblin Serum? After Carnage has taken that out of his bloodstream, what happens when you combine the Green Goblin Serum and Carnage? And we get the answer inside 798. But 797 is where we get our first indications, as Norman Osborn takes a rat and bites its head off, as the Goblin King, Phil Urich, tries to break into a Norman Osborn stronghold and ends up on the wrong end of a Carnage symbiote claw hand. It is a devastating piece, and we get the sense that the more ruthless, more brutal, more insane version of Norman Osborn has returned, and it is now more lethal than ever. And unfortunately, J. Jonah Jameson at the end of issue number 797 spills the beans, connecting the dots for Norman Osborn, letting him know that Peter Parker is the Amazing Spider-Man. And that's where we're going to pick up in issue number 798. You've got Peter Parker trying to team up with this group of science cohorts inside his department at the Daily Bugle. They're tracking down the tritium, and they finally find mind that they know where it is, and it's coming towards them quickly. As the Goblin breaks into the Daily Bugle, he waits and he lets Peter Parker escape so that way he can change into a Spider-Man costume because he already knows. J. Jonah Jameson is of course wrestling with this while trying to undo the ropes on him as he's still bound up in this Goblin hideout. And while Betty Brant tries to do a little bit of misdirection, she's going to, post something on the website so that way Spider-Man already knows, and it's like, oh, well, that's going to alert the cops. So I tell you what, Betty, I've got a bridge I want to sell you, a Brooklyn Bridge, because he's remembering when he threw Peter Parker's girlfriend Gwen Stacy off of that bridge, ultimately resulting in her death. And then he throws a couple slight jabs at Ben Urich, the uncle of Phil, who he just recently killed a few days ago, before sending this tritium head cascading towards the people with only 10 minutes left before he blows up the top of the Daily Bugle. That's when Spider-Man makes his fantastic arrival. He's got less than 10 minutes to combat the Goblin, save all the people, get them out of the building, and then save himself. Of course, we do have the side plot where Flash Thompson's agent Anti-Venom is going to play a much bigger role. He's freeing J. Jonah Jameson. The nanny, Emma, is now getting notified that she's going to have to enact a plan that was put in place by Norman Osborn, who hired her to take care of the kids. So to put her in place so that way he has some security for young Normie and Stanley, the children of Liz Allen and Harry Osborn. And the Green Goblin and Spider-Man are still battling it out in the top level of the Daily Bugle, trying to help everybody escape before we get to the final conclusion, the concussion from this explosion. And as Spider-Man whips up a cocoon for the bomb and then another one for himself, what he's going to be left with is a cacophonous blow to the rest of the Daily Bugle, leaving nothing but rubble at the top level of this actual superstructure, this skyscraper. And Norman is there impaled on a beam in a very familiar scene. We have seen it before in movies and comic books, and as he lays there dead, he feels the remorse. He feels that he wishes he could have saved Norman Osborn, and that is so funny to Norman because he truly believes that. He believes that he could save the Green Goblin, and that hopefully he would allow him to come back, and that's what the Carnage symbiote does. The symbiote bonds with Norman Osborn on a much stronger level, creating and transforming him into the Red Goblin with this fiery smoke coming from his face. And this is a foe that Spider-Man has never faced in his life before. It doesn't set off his spider sense. It's got all kinds of dexterity. It's got enhanced power. He's got the Green Goblin Serum. He is a completely different combatant, and he is going to kill Spider-Man if he doesn't get out of there. And then because the Carnage symbiote has bonded to the pumpkin bombs, they also have their own kind of life essence. They have the ability to bite and latch onto Spider-Man as he tries to escape, leaving an explosion almost taking off his leg and dropping him into a building. And as this Red Goblin, as this evil entity of murderous rage and intent makes his way into this abandoned building, he picks up the spider tracer that Spider-Man left on him and starts talking into it. Hey, I don't want to kill you. I never cared about Peter Parker. I only cared about Spider-Man. The spider is the only one that I wanted. So I tell you what, I will make you a deal. I will let you live. I will let the rest of your family live if you just give up being the spider. I don't care about Peter Parker, but if I catch you crawling on another wall, everyone that you ever loved, Mary Jane, Aunt May, Robbie, Betty, Jonah, everybody, your freaking dentist, they're all dead. And they will die in ways that only a Red Goblin could come up with. As he starts maniacally laughing. Show me you understand if you think it's a deal. And you see across the cityscape on the opposite rooftop, the shirt of Spider-Man burning, smoking in the ashes, symbolizing his victory, the Goblin's victory. Of course, Peter Parker, the man himself, not necessarily the hero Spider-Man, the man himself is not going to let this keep him down. There are still two more issues, and we're going to see Peter Parker come toe-to-toe, face-to-face with the Red Goblin and take him down whether he's Spider-Man or not, or at least that's the intention. And that's where we finish up with Amazing Spider-Man 798. So while you might be able to go in and enjoy this issue on its own, having that kind of backstory, understanding what the Green Goblin's been through, how he was cured of his goblin insanity, how he no longer had his strength, how he's gone through so many different journeys to try and regain that insanity and that strength back, and then only to come up with a situation where he can take the Carnage symbiote, purge himself of the cure, and then become far more frightening and powerful than ever before. That is the origin of the Red Goblin, and that is the story that Dan Slott is planning on finishing out his run with, and I can't be more excited. While a lot of people aren't necessarily a fan of Dan Slott's run, if we're talking about Stuart Immonen on our art, if we're talking about the people, the great artistic contributors to this series, you're going to have to be picking up 798, 799, 800, and 801, because this is going to be one for the ages, or at least that's what it seems like so far. But I want to know what you guys think too, so hit me up in the comments down below, and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.